Hello YouTube, today's video is going to be about the 10 worst champions in League of Legends that you should be avoiding in Season 12. This video is made by Skillcapped and they have decided 2 champions for each lane that they think are the worst, and I have made my own 10 champions, so 2 for each lane that I think are the worst. So if you have these champions in mind for a champion pool for next season, or you find them interesting, or you're currently playing them, or had an idea of playing them in the future, then you probably shouldn't. So yeah, Season 12 starts January 7th, it's right around the corner, and for that reason, I basically want to make sure that if you're really interested about climbing, that you are avoiding these champions and are picking some other champions that will help you climb faster. So let's get right into the video.
But that is no longer the case heading into Season 12. So much of Gwen's laning power came from the mass amount of attack speed on.
So the first champion is Gwen. I actually personally think that Gwen is not that bad. Yes, she did get nerfed, but with the new lethal tempo, she did kinda get a compensation for it. The champion's win rate is fairly low, and I am aware of it, but I also believe that a lot of people just play Gwen into bad matchups and pick the champion at wrong times. So yeah, she's not the best in the current meta, but I wouldn't say that she's one of the 2 worst top laners in the game right now.
If you know how to pilot her properly, but even then there are many stronger top laners to choose from for Season 12. Midway through Season 11, Gangplank.
Yeah, so in my opinion, Gwen can be quite strong, especially into ranged champions because of her W. Or if she's playing against immobile top laners, then she can also be fairly strong, again, because of her E and because of her Q and the slows that she has with her ult as well. So yeah, into both ranged champions that doesn't completely lane bully her, or against immobile top laners, I'd say that Gwen is still viable, despite the fact that she has a low win rate. But as I said, I think it's because people play the champion not incorrectly, but just pick the champion at bad times. So I don't agree on Gwen. And then they put GP on the list. And they probably haven't seen Solar Bacca's stream, because this champion can literally 1v9. Requires mechanics. But definitely not a bad champion. Again, I know the stats are pretty bad on it, but again, I think people are playing the champion or picking it in ranked way too early, and having experienced with the champion enough, like practicing the barrels and getting the barrel combos off in team fights, and just playing too aggressive in laning phase rather than just playing safe.
Which the majority of players don't have. You're required to put in so much more work in order to thrive with GP compared to many other tops. So if you enjoy a challenge, by all means, but if you like climbing in ranked, we would recommend staying away. Throughout the majority of...
So they mentioned Gwen and GP. So for GP, the champion scales insanely well. Yes, it is mechanical. Yes, it is better for high elo players that typically will have better mechanics than low elo. So if you are low elo, probably not the best champion, but in my opinion, not a top 2 worst champions for top lanes. So now let's go to my list. So my list consists of Yorick, because this champion is completely dead. The only thing that this champion can do is split push, and if he's playing in a bad matchup, or he simply plays against a Shen who can ult and then TP back to lane, or a team fighting champion like Malphite that's just gonna take the 5v4 fight and instantly force a fight while you're splitting topside, or you're playing against a ranged champion, or you're playing against a champion that can defend against Yorick, your champion is completely useless, because you don't have utility, you can't team fight, you are literally on side lane the entire game. So that's my first pick. My second pick is Renekton. Now, I know Renekton is a strong champion and a fairly simple champion in terms of lower elos, but the thing is, the champion's been nerfed many times. And they have nerfed it because of pro play, because this champion will constantly be picked in pro play, because it will be picked in synergy mostly with the jungler. If you see like an Elise, if you see like Nidalee, any type of early game jungler will basically play for a Renekton lane, get ahead and try and snowball the game through that. But the champion on its own is pretty weak because of the nerfs, because of the indirect nerfs. And in my opinion, even though the champion is simple, I simply just don't think that it's good. So those are my 2 suggestions for champions you should avoid in Season 12. Obviously, as I mentioned with GP, if you don't have mechanics, then don't go for it. And it definitely takes a lot of games of practicing before GP can even be rewarding. And for Gwen, I mean, yeah, it's just also a very situational pick, but I don't think those are the 2 worst top laners.
Season 11,
now let's go to jungle. Olaf. I actually agree. Olaf pretty much is just bad now because of the Gorinker Conquer nerfs.
Skirmishing over early scuttles is where Olaf
and he just doesn't seem to be good in current like jungle meta.
The enemy jungler doesn't have to suffice. It's way more difficult to consistently obtain an early advantage with Olaf, which makes him a very lackluster pick. A skill shot slow is the only utility Olaf provides, and he falls off extremely hard later in the game. With objective bounties introduced, it becomes even more difficult for a heavy early game reliant jungler like Olaf to succeed. With marksmen like Vayne, Ezreal, and Caitlyn in meta who...
That is true for lower elos. If people don't know how to end the game early, there's no point in picking something that's really strong early.
Soraka and Nami are in meta means it's increasingly difficult to blind pick Olaf and expect positive results. Another jungler who Riot seems to have forgotten about is Volibear. Volley really lacks any kind of identity right now, as he's simply outclassed by other junglers.
Yeah, Volibear is not really the best champion in the current meta. Has a little bit of utility for teamfights with his Q, can make some good dives with his ult, but definitely not a good champion. If it's top 2 worst junglers, it's close, but in my opinion there is a champion that is worse than Volibear.
He's taken a sizable hit. Similar to Olaf, Volley really struggles in the later stages against champs with strong kite and healing power.
Yeah, that is true.
On top of meta, along with Enchantress supports, you need to get a massive early lead in order to win out. We wouldn't be surprised to see Volley targeted with a buff in the coming patches, but until then, you should prioritize junglers higher up on our tier list. Solo queue.
So, time for my 2 junglers. So, my 2 suggestions for junglers you should avoid are Olaf as well, simply because of the fact that the champion has been indirectly nerfed in so many different ways. Both from items and Scuttlecrab nerf, and just the current jungle meta being a lot of kind of high mobility junglers, like Talon is a really good example, Graves pretty good example. So, simply because of that, Olaf can't really get on top of them because they're just gonna dash over a wall or kite him out. My champion for jungle that I think is really, really bad, that is actually even worse than Volibear, is Diana. And the reason why is because Diana also got nerfed with Conquer. She got a direct nerf after she got buffed, so she had insanely good clear speed, and now she just has pretty much an average clear speed. And with the Conquer nerfs, the champion, in my opinion, is just pretty weak. The champion doesn't have the best ganks pre-6, and the teamfight aspect of Diana can be pretty good, but again, you need insane mechanics. You need to do like a flash E, no, a E, flash ulti, combining with a proto belt somewhere in there. You can also throw in the Q in somewhere. In order to make like a massive team fighting engage. But in my opinion, if you want a champion that's has really good team fight impact and really good team fight engage and can 1v9 carry a team fight, why not just pick Qiyana? Qiyana basically pushes the entire team into a wall. It's a bigger stun, more damage, can easier flank, and yeah, it's just, in my opinion, a better version, a way better version than Diana. And then on top of that, the assassin part of Diana, I just don't believe that she's the strongest assassin at one-shotting one target. I believe there are many other assassins that are currently meta in the jungle that are way better at one-shotting than Diana is. So the 2 champions that I suggest avoiding for Season 12 would be Olaf and Diana. I will have to say though, if any of these champions that I mentioned or that are being mentioned in this video ends up being either directly buffed through just getting better numbers, so like less cooldown, less mana, more damage, then obviously throughout Season 12 that can happen, and then the champion is no longer bad, but this is just for start of Season 12. Champion can also be indirectly buffed, either through items or other champions being nerfed. that will then bring them automatically up in the tier lists. So Olaf and Diana, in my opinion, are 2 junglers that I think that you shouldn't be playing Season 12. Now let's go over to mid lane.
Rise has been in a terrible state for many months, and nothing has changed in that regard for Season 12. It's actually quite impressive how long Rise has been able to hold down a sub 45% win rate. His meta matchups are
again, we're only talking about win rate. Yes, it is true, Rise win rate is really low. But I will say that Crown seems like a good item on Rise and gives you pretty good scaling. And again, in most situations, Rise is not a good pick, and you shouldn't be picking, but there are some situations where Rise is pretty good, especially where he can just freely scale, because the champion is insanely good at scaling. The thing with Rise is that he lacks range, because if I have to say a similar champion that also scales, Victor also scales, but he has a little bit better survivability, in my opinion, and he also has, in my opinion, probably better scaling, simply because he will do more damage in team fights because he has longer range. So yeah, that is simply why, but I don't think Rise is one of the 2 worst mid laners, even though the win rate is bad. He's not good, but not top 2 worst. And then we have Lucian, who is no longer being considered a mid laner, due to the fact that he got changed from being a solo laner to his abilities, I think it's just W, now being focused on a duo lane, so he's obviously an AD carry, so I don't know why.
With Lucian, you're throwing all your eggs in the early game basket, and if you end up
why
behind, you're of no use
skill
at all.
capped?
The only thing Lucian provides for his team is damage.
I don't know why skill capped are putting an ADC in mid lane. Kinda seems like they ran out of ideas and then they looked at win rate and it's like, oh, Lucian mid lane win rate is pretty bad. Well, yes, that is because he got changed from being a mid laner to an AD carry, so
but he's rarely played at all in the current meta. Weak scaling and
kinda not really fair to put Lucian in there, as I feel like that's kinda just lack of what do you call it? I mean, just how do you call it? I guess just lack of research. I couldn't find 2 really bad mid laners. I was thinking about it, but the one champion I definitely think you should be avoiding is Azir. And the reason why is because, yes, he is also a scaling champion, but he didn't get as big of a buff from the items compared to other champions. I think, first of all, because he didn't get a really good item during preseason, that's the one downside. The second thing is he didn't directly or indirectly get either buffed or nerfed. And a lot of other mid laners basically got buffed. So therefore, I could only really come up with Azir. Simply because I didn't quite agree with Rise. In most situations, yes, especially in low elo, you shouldn't be picking Rise. There are many other better champions like Annie, Malzahar, stuff like that. So, but Azir is basically the champion I suggest you not to play. And yes, I'd rather just put one champion that I really think is not good for mid lane, rather than say, oh yeah, Lucian is bad mid laner because he's an AD carry. So yeah, kinda low shot there from skill capped. Not impressed.
Don't bode well if you're looking for a high value ADC for Season 12. Kalista fits that criteria and is one of the most underwhelming bot lane carries.
Kalista is not that good right now. I agree.
Meta, which is terrible for Kalista. Unless you can amass a crazy early game advantage, there's no way Kalista can compete 20 minutes onwards. You might as well throw in the towel if you don't come out of lane with a few kills, because a Vayne with Soraka or Lulu is going to be 10 times more useful later on. The objective bounty introduction is not something Kalista enjoys, as it only gives the enemy team a greater chance at scaling you. There just isn't any incentive to prioritize Kalista over 99% of the other ADCs, so your time is better spent learning other picks. For our second ADC pick, we have Varus, albeit he's not in as bad a state as Kalista for solo queue.
Yep, I agree. Varus is not that bad. He's not good, but situation he can be okay. I've even seen AP Varus builds focusing on just pressing R, kinda the same as for Kai'Sa.
But doesn't excel in any field. If you're a Varus one-trick, he's a viable pick, but for the average player, there's no selling point at the moment. With Enchanter supports being played a ton in meta, it doesn't fit Varus' theme as much as other ADCs. Varus wants to be aggressive, looking for pick plays with ult, but because we're seeing way less aggro supports, the follow-up on picks is less reliable. If you can guarantee an aggressive support duo, then you can make it work, but as a consistent blind pick, Varus doesn't stand up. Set as a top laner is in a pretty good...
So I will say that for bot lane, what you need to take into account is the fact that it's a duo lane. So basically you wanna either be picking something that has good synergy. So picking for bot lane, you would pick meta AD carries. Meta AD carries could be either AD carries that are really strong from directly being buffed or being the best at abusing like Gale Force or Kraken Slayer, Shield, stuff like that. Or it's champions that have really good synergy with meta supports. So meta supports could also be champions that really synergize from really well with items or directly did get buffed. So what you need to take into account is what champion benefits a lot with the second part of the lane, either AD carry or the support, that has really good synergy with those type of champions and that type of playstyle. Those would be the good AD carries. The bad AD carries and also supports would be the champions that doesn't have great synergy with the meta champions from the other side. So basically, if a bad meta or a bad support would be a champion that doesn't synergize well with meta AD carries, for example. So for AD carry, I put Ezreal as number 1. I know that Ezreal does have a crown build and he can be really safe as an AD carry, but in my opinion, people are picking it, really not hitting that many skill shots. And on top of that, I think that if we're talking about champions for AD carry that can go crown, I think that champions like Kaisa are a lot better. There's an AP Kaisa build, which includes crown, and I think that is just way better than for Ezreal. And Ezreal just doesn't seem to have great synergy. Even though we're playing with Enchanter like supports, Ezreal just doesn't scale as hard as a Vayne, a Kog'Maw, a Twitch, a... yeah, basically those 3 champions that comes to mind, right? So that's why I put Ezreal in there. Kalista I also put in there, because Kalista doesn't really have great synergy with enchanting supports. She wants to go all in, she wants to have like... she has good synergy with aggressive support, so like a Fresh, a Blitzcrank, a Nautilus, stuff like that. But we're not really seeing that too much right now in the current meta for supports, and that's why I basically put Kalista in there as well. So, support, the last role. They start off by putting Zed, who is very situationally picked in support. Yes, it does get picked in pro play as a support, but it is not traditionally a support. So again, kinda like a low blow from skill cap putting a top lane champion into support. I know he can be played as support, but I think he has a higher play rate as top lane than support. It's just situational that you'll pick set support. It's not like you will blind pick in a plan, oh, I'll play set support, because, again, most supports on bot lane are ranged right now, which set doesn't really enjoy. And then we have Galio support, which again is very situational, and Galio sees very little play right now, and if he does see some play, it is mostly in mid lane. So another low blow from skill cap putting champions that doesn't traditionally go in the lane into that lane and say that, oh, it's a top 2 worst champion.
While ranged supports like Lux and Nami have taken over the meta. Your laning power into double ranged bot lane is super weak, which hurts Galio a ton right now. Especially if you're playing into ADC with a dash or blink, it's nearly impossible for you to do anything at all for the first few minutes. In a lot of matchups, you'll just end up getting shoved in under tower, poked away at while the enemy enchanter outlanes and eventually outscales you later on. Alright guys, before we wrap...
Okay, yeah, for support, they picked 2 non-support champions, basically, so good job. For me, I put Senna and I put Karma. The reason why I put Senna is because she's not really a traditional Enchanter support, and in my opinion, Enchanter supports benefit the most. And if not the Enchanter supports, then it would be the tank and gate supports with the new Even Shroud or Ever Shroud or whatever the item is called. That would be the second best. And because Senna doesn't go with that either, that's basically the reason why I put Senna in this right here. She is a scaling support, she does do damage, she does have some healing, but I think that when it comes to healing aspect, I think a champion like Soraka does way better than Senna. When it comes to damage aspect, I think that champions like Seraph, Lux, potentially even a Vel'Koz is just gonna do way more damage anyway. And yeah, Senna is just quite immobile, can easily get killed, doesn't really have great synergy with any AD carry almost, I would say. So that's why she's here. And then I put Karma. Karma because she kind of got buffed and then she got nerfed. But I just think that she's one of the weaker Enchanter supports overall. Simply because that she doesn't have any healing. And the shield that she has with the bonus movement speed is not as big compared to other supports. And then, in my opinion, she just kind of lacks range when she doesn't have her ult Q. A lot of other champions will pretty much outrange her or outdamage her, so I just think that there are supports that does what Karma does, but does it better and synergizes better with the current AD carries, and also synergizes better with the support items that got buffed or changed in preseason. So those are my 9 champions. I couldn't find a second champion for mid lane because I didn't have one of Revolution in there. So overall, I mean, the skill kept top 10 or the 10 worst champions. Pretty bad video. I mean, the top lane one, didn't really agree on. But I mean, they did at least mention 2 top lane champions. For jungle, I think the jungle list was okay. Mid lane, yeah, well, half of it was just not good. AD carry was also okay. And then support was just completely trolled. They didn't even mention one support for the top 2 worst supports for season 12. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think are the worst champions for each lane in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, then remember to leave a like and always subscribe if you want to see more. And then I hope to see you guys in my next YouTube video or on my next live stream on Twitch. See you guys.